chocolate muffins, 'tis I, Ceri of CeriGotGame. It's been a while since I did a proper game review, and considering I've been kind of addicted to a game for the first time in a long time, I thought it was high time to do a review of it. I just said time a lot of times. The game we're going to review today is Shadow of Mordor for PS4. Shadow of Mordor is one of those games I've been following the development of for some time. As long as I've been a gamer, it's been exciting to watch the innovations that developers are constantly inventing. It's kind of hard to believe that within my own lifetime, I've seen games go from something as straightforward as Space Invaders into transcendent experiences as wide open as Skyrim, as engaging as Bioshock Infinite, as punishing yet rewarding as Bloodborne, and so much more. One innovation that interests me the most is how developers are constantly pushing the boundaries of complex AI. Shadow of Mordor widens the prospects with the advent of the Nemesis system. Not only do enemies range in weakness and difficulty, but if you manage to fight one of the Uruk without killing it or dying by its hands, the enemy will remember you and be that much stronger for it.
You'll die now!
But before I get into more depth, let's break this review up into sections like the big boys do. Starting with what I consider least important to most, let's first go into story.
But the Dark Lord Sauron was defeated by a last alliance of men and elves.
I know some of you might be a little startled to find that I'd say a game based in a world as richly developed as Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is lacking in the story department. But it's true, at least in the 20-odd hours I've played so far, there really isn't much story to speak of. You begin the game with two of the most cliché backstories ever invented. One of the characters has amnesia, and the other literally had his family slain by orcs. Well, Uruks, but still. But not that that's necessarily a terrible strike against Shadow of Mordor, as I think the game's real strength is in its gameplay. But I digress. You start out as Talion, Gondorian ranger who has been banished from death, meaning every time you should die, you are instead reborn a little weaker, while your enemies grow a little stronger. Paired with Talion is an elf in ghost-like form, whose identity and relevance become more evident as you find items that unlock his memories of pre-ghost life. Both characters are important for what they bring to the table as far as gameplay, but story-wise, there's not really much going on. Maybe there's a big, huge reveal at the end of the game that ties everything together, but so far the plotline of this Lord of the Rings segue is pretty flat. Surprisingly, you learn more about the world and its history through the items you find, which trigger audio clips spoken from various perspectives throughout the game world. Some are directly related to the game's story, but a lot of them are just cool extras. In a way, this game reminds me more of Silmarillion than the Lord of the Rings or Hobbit books, focused more on small snippets of individual story than one continuous plotline. As to how much background information you need to understand the game, there really isn't much you wouldn't have figured out on your own. Some sort of evil bad guy named Sauron has these Uruk things enslaving and killing all the humans, and you're on a mission to break your curse of undying and help Elf Dude discover who he used to be. Watching the movies and or reading the books will definitely help you fill in the gaps, but again, none of it is really necessary. You don't even need to know who Golem is, just some sort of slimy, not-quite-orc that sometimes helps you, sometimes leads you into traps. But I do have to mention that while the story isn't by any means deep, what is there is well written and well acted out. Some of the dialogue between you and your attacking Uruk is downright hilarious, and there's just enough emergent story about the amnesia elf that you actually do start to get a little curious about who he used to be. So if we're going to stand by arbitrary numbers to judge complex things, I guess we'll give the story a 3 out of 5 detached Uruk heads. The visuals of Shadow of Mordor are a little difficult to judge, because while there is very little variation in the location and enemy models, what is there is quite skillfully rendered and animated. The entire game is very dark and gritty, as anything taking place in Sauron's shadow ought to be. It definitely earns its M rating with all the violent bloodshed, and there's a primal, visceral satisfaction in cutting the head off an Uruk warchief who's been taunting and puncturing you with sword wounds for the last 5 hours of playing. There's only the most minor of jerkiness to the animations, and I think that has more to do with the zoom controls on the camera than the actual models. There's also quite a lot of variation amongst the Uruks themselves. No two warchiefs look exactly the same, and in relation to the gameplay, if you fight a warchief and they escape, often they'll be sporting a grisly wound or 3 when you find them again later on. One chief who escaped after I'd thrown him into a bonfire was completely burned black. Even the non-humanoids are awesome looking. Being a crazy cat lady, of course I immediately fell in love with the Khadgors, sort of giant lion/rhinoceri, who you are able to tame pretty early on into the game. If you guys have seen my Assassin's Creed 3 review from a couple years ago, then you'll remember I critiqued that game for looking too much the same from area to area. Most of the areas in Shadow of Mordor do look the same, but considering the game map is all pretty much set in one valley, then that sameness makes a lot more sense. It's also just, I don't know, crisper somehow, even though it's all dark greens and blacks. Assassin's Creed 3 felt washed out, uninspired. like you're playing inside of a painting depicting a scene from the American Revolution, rather than playing in the actual time period. Shadow of Mordor feels gross and gritty, exactly as that setting should feel. So all that considered, I have to give the game's visuals a 4 out of 5. As those of you who follow my channel should know, I haven't had my PlayStation 4 for very long, and it's the first and only of the new gen consoles that I own. I remember in Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword, which I also reviewed, the developers tried to attach sound effects like the metallic shing to your controller whenever you used an item or waved a sword. The audio speakers in the PlayStation 4 controllers are much more developed, as you might expect, and the way Shadow of Mordor utilizes them makes much more sense. During loading screens, by default your controller will play audio clips that reveal bits of story or world knowledge, same as when you find an artifact on the ground. And during combat, the sounds your controller makes can be very useful to alert you to things like reaching a high enough hit streak to unleash your wraith finisher, or just sounding cool like the ghostly war cry of your elf companion as he helps you to fight off multiple strikes. The voice acting is also excellent, very Game of Thronesian, with lots of guttural rumbling and slobbering Uruk death threats.
Oh no! I thought you was bigger!
With so few characters, there isn't too much opportunity for voice acting. But again, going back to the sound clips that played during cutscenes and such, there wasn't a single line that seemed lacking in proper emotion or made me cringe from terribleness. The music is pretty but understated. I never got annoyed at it replaying over and over like I did at some of the more punctuating Assassin's Creed soundtracks. Yeah, not much else to say about the audio quality of Shadow of Mordor, just that it's minimalist but well done, neither annoyingly distracting nor overwhelmingly good. 4 out of 5. Finally, we come to the meat of this review, the gameplay. You may have noticed throughout this video that I keep drawing comparisons between Shadow of Mordor and the Assassin's Creed franchise, and with good reason. Like Darksiders, Shadow of Mordor is heavily influenced by games that came before it. The combat mechanics are very similar to the Arkham Batman series, and there are many other parallels as well, but its most undeniable influence is definitely Assassin's Creed. The climbing, the side quests, the interactive map, in some ways it feels very much like a reskinning of everyone's favorite series about ethical murderers for hire. Yet there must be something different about Shadow of Mordor, some whole that is greater than its parts. Because as I said at the start of this video, this game has gripped me. It's held my attention and my hunger for completion like so few games have in the past few months, if not years. I'm no stranger to the Assassin's Creed series. I got 100% completion in 1 and 2, and I loved Brotherhood. But by Revelations and AC3, I was burnt out. I just didn't enjoy the gameplay all that much anymore. I didn't care about the characters, the world seemed boring. It just started to feel like I was playing the same game over and over, much like every Call of Duty or Battlefield game I tried to get into. Even the pirate mechanics weren't enough to keep me interested long enough to finish AC4. So why is it that I can play Shadow of Mordor for hours and still want more? Is it wanting to know who the ghost elf is? Is it the dark and brooding sex appeal of Talion? Is it the hunt for vengeance against those asshole war chiefs who got the drop on me when I was still new and weak? I don't know, but I really do enjoy this game, so maybe it's just a lot of little positive aspects adding up. Even while working on this review, I'm eager to finish it so I can go play some more. So as far as gameplay goes, carpe diem, let's go for it. Gameplay gets a 5 out of 5. Deal with it.
And good riddance!
So to finish this up, will you enjoy Shadow of Mordor? Hey. So, will you yourself enjoy Shadow of Mordor? Well, that's really up to your personal tastes. I know for me... Can you not yell? I told her I was recording a video and said, could you please be quiet? Nope. So, will you yourself enjoy Shadow of Mordor? Well, that really depends on your own personal tastes. I can say for me that I really do like this game. I am enjoying it a lot, and I'm really hopeful that this series, if there are more sequels, manages to stay interesting and fun, unlike Assassin's Creed. So, yeah, I would say you should at least try it, rent it, see if you like it. If you like Assassin's Creed, you'll probably like Shadow of Mordor. If you hate Assassin's Creed, you might like it. It depends on why you hate Assassin's Creed. Yeah. It really depends on if you like the gameplay, because like I said, there's not much story. Visuals and audio are okay, but they're nothing amazing, but it's all about that gameplay, man. It's all about that gameplay. Anyway, thanks for watching. Like, favorite, all that stuff. This video is, I know, already going to take at least 10 hours of editing, so if you enjoyed it, please like it and share it with your friends. It really helps. It really helps me make it feel worth that time spent editing. And if you have other games you'd like me to review, well, go ahead and leave a comment and tell me about them. I can't necessarily do it, but I will definitely take it under consideration. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go find something else to do for the next couple of hours, because now it's going to be noisy for like the next 3. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go play some more Shadows of Mordor. Bye! Good enough.